Okay, students, I am really happy to teach you today. Now, we know that the topic for today's discussion is about test of hypothesis. What is test of hypothesis அப்படின்னா என்ன டைட்டில் அது பின்னால் என்னங்கிறத நம்ம பார்ப்போம். அதுக்கு முன்னால் பாப்புலேஷன்னா என்ன? ஓகே, a big group of elements aimed at to study something on it is called a population. On it is a population. Okay, அதாவது ஒரு பெரிய group of elements aimed at study something on it is a population. It's called a population. Okay, take for example total people in Coimbatore. Suppose we want to know the average income of a people in Coimbatore. Okay, then that is called a population. Or otherwise total students in VSP Engineering College is a population. Suppose we are studying the percentage of students who got pass in mathematics. We are interested in that. Then the population would be the students of all students in VSP Engineering College. So a population we call a big group of elements aimed at study something on it. Some characteristic, to study the characteristic on that particular big group is called a population. Now next coming is sample. What is a sample? Of course, a sample is a small part of a population, again to study something. உதாரணமா கோயம்புத்தூர் we will take that. Okay, so in the Coimbatore we want to study the average income of a person. So what we do, only some people we are taking and then we are studying them, and from the study we can extend our idea to the whole population. Again you come to VSP Engineering College, the whole students is a population. Suppose I want to study about some characteristics, some intelligence of the students in VSP College. What I do, I take a small part of VSP Engineering College, then I am studying on that, then the total idea I am extending to the whole population, that is VSP Engineering College, and that we call it as sample. So sample is a small part of a big population in order to study some characteristic on that and try to apply to the whole population. That's called sample. Now coming to the parameters and statistics. What is called parameters and statistics? Okay, parameters nothing but the characteristics of a population. Characteristics of a population, we call it as parameters. Characteristics of population is called parameters. Take for example, we are taking a population and we are finding out the mean of that population. Then the population mean is one parameters. Other one, you take population standard deviation. We are taking a population, for that we are finding out the standard deviation, then we call it as population standard deviation. Similarly, population variance in another characteristics of the population, it is called parameters. Now what is a statistics? Statistics is the characteristic of a sample is called statistics. Characteristic of a sample are called statistics. Take for example, if we take some sample and finding out mean, then that would be a characteristics of the sample, and that is called statistics. Similarly, take some sample from the population find out the deviation, standard deviation, and that will give you what is called the statistics. So any study based on the sample or any characteristic of a sample is called statistics, not a statics, statistics. Now coming to the type of the sampling. So what is a sampling? Sampling means choosing some small group from the big group is called sampling. Okay, taking some small group from the big group is called a sampling there. That can be taken by different method. Okay, in different method we are taking sampling. The first one, take for example the first one, this is a big part. From the big part we are taking a small part. Then what we call, this is what is called a population, we call, am I correct? This is called population, and this is called a sample. Okay, so this sample can be taken from this particular population by different way. The first one is called purposive sampling, second one is called random sampling, third one is called stratified sampling, and then systematic sampling. What is purposeful sampling? So purposeful sampling means purposefully we are taking in order to something. That's called purposive sampling. Take for example, we want to know the average mean of the school teachers in Coimbatore. This is a Coimbatore. We are taking the samples. Our aim is, our purpose is to study the average wage of the teachers in Coimbatore. Then it is called a purposive sampling. Okay, right. What is random sampling? Random sampling means what? From what can I say is that from this we are taking sampling here. Am I correct? Sample, a small part of a big part is called sampling. We are taking each and every items in the sampling such that the the chance of choosing an item have equal probability. Such a way we are making a sampling. That sampling is called what is called the random sampling. Okay, so random sampling means what? We are choosing the item such that the chosen item must have equal probability, and that type of choosing a small part from the big part, we call it as a random sampling. What is stratified random sampling? Okay, so stratified random sampling means stratified random sampling, that means we are dividing this population to some groups. From each group we are selecting the samples. Okay, so we are dividing what we do actually, we are dividing this particular population into small group, and then we are making a sampling from each group. Such a type of sampling we call it as stratified random sampling or stratified sampling. The last one we call it as systematic sampling. Systematic sampling. So what do you mean by systematic sampling? We are using some systems in order to choose the samples. Okay, take for example odd number people come here, like that. Suppose I want to choose some students from a class. I am saying even registration number students come here and form the group. Even register number or register numbers whose number is even come here and stay here. For 10 students I am choosing. Such a way I am using some systematic sampling. That is called what? Yeah, systematic sampling. So this is called systematic sampling. So there are many types of samplings are there. The first one is called purposive sampling, second one is called random sampling, third one is called stratified sampling, and last one is systematic sampling. And now let us come to the next topic, that is what we test of significance sampling distribution. What is sampling distribution then? Okay, now sampling distribution is nothing but from a single population for the same sample size we find the mean for all and we distribute according to the interval. Take for example, a big population is there. From that particular population, what I do, from that particular population, what I am doing there, I am taking lot of samples from that. Okay, take for example here I can take a population like that. Now suppose this is what? A big population. From that I am taking a small samples from that, and these samples have a different means. We cannot say that the sample, this is first sample, second sample, third sample, have the same mean. We cannot say that the same mean. Am I correct? So we are distributing these mean according to the interval. We are distributing this mean according to the interval. Okay, so the distribution of this mean according to the interval, we call it as sampling distribution. We have to distribute the sampling mean according to the interval it comes, so we call it as sampling distribution. We call it as sampling distribution. Now what is the test of significance? Test of significance difference. Okay, now we will study in detail in the future, but now you understand what exactly meaning of that. The test of significance means, as I already told you, that the sample characteristics can be extended to the population. The sample characteristic can be extended to the population. Take for example, this is sample, and this is population. You suppose we are studying some characteristics on this particular sample, and we are trying to apply this particular idea to this population. Suppose x bar, we are finding out for this sample. Is that this x bar equals for this population also? Is this x bar is the same for this population also, or different comes? Like that, the deviations of the sample mean and population mean, or sample standard deviation and the population deviation, is there any deviation? Is there any difference between these characteristics of the sample and the characteristics of this population? Is there any difference? Or the mean of the sample equals a population mean? So that difference we are studying, and that is called test of significance. Test of significance we say. Alright, so coming to next, we talk about test of hypothesis. What is test of hypothesis? Okay, test of hypothesis. Usually when we take the sample and we try to justify the population characteristics, that is from the sample, take for example, now I'll take here, which one, this I will take. Now this is what the population, okay, and suppose this is the sample. Now whether we can extend some idea from this particular sample study to the population, whether it is possible to extend the idea from here to here. Okay, take for example, as I already told you, that if the mean of the sample is x bar, if the mean of the sample is x bar, can we say that the mean of this, that is usually we say as mu, the mean of this is also equal, or the equal, or the mean of the sample is different from the mean of the population if the sample comes from this, if this sample comes from this, is the mean of this sample equals the mean of this population, I mean x bar equals mu, where mu is the mean of this population, x bar is the mean of this sample. We are testing. So for that we have to assume a blind statement first. On the blind statement we have to do the statistical methods, and that statistical method will definitely help us to extend that idea from this particular sample to the population. So the blind statement on which we have to apply statistical methods, whether to accept the blind statement or reject the blind statement, which connects the sample and the population, we call it as test of hypothesis. Test of hypothesis we say. Okay, so blind statement on which we have to make some statistical methods, and that in finally we will accept or reject the blind statement, that is called test of hypothesis. Now what we call the critical region, this you understand now, afterwards you will understand very clearly. Okay, so now the critical region, what's a critical region means? The region which rejects the null hypothesis is critical region. Here some wrong is going on there, actually you must understand here. The region yes, now it's okay. Now the region which rejects the null hypothesis is called a critical region or rejection region. So the region which rejects the null hypothesis, so this null hypothesis I will explain you in the future very clearly, but for the time being you understand null hypothesis. The region which rejects the null hypothesis is called rejection region or critical region, and other region is called accepted region. That is, the null hypothesis accepted in some region and rejected in another region. The rejected region is called a critical region, and the accepted region is as it is accepted region. Okay, now coming to level of significance. What is the level of significance? Okay, now level of significance means The probability that the statistics lies in the critical region is called level of significance. That is, level of significance means at what level we are accepting or rejecting the null hypothesis. Okay, null hypothesis we usually say it is null hypothesis we usually say it is H naught. Okay, null hypothesis we say usually it is H naught. So H naught means there is no significant difference. That's called H naught we say. So what's the probability that the H naught lies in the critical region is called level of significance. I will tell you in the future, you will understand very clearly about that. For the time being, you understand this very clearly. Level of significance means the probability that the statistics lies in the critical region. The statistics lies in the critical region is called level of significance. Okay, so at what level it is rejected? At what level it is rejected? At 1% level or at 5% level? I mean, at 1% level, I mean the significance level, we are accepting the H naught or we are rejecting the H naught. At 95% confidence, whether we are rejecting H naught or accepting H naught, these are called level of significance. Okay, level of significance means the level in which the significance exists. Okay, there are usually only two levels we are taking into account. One is 1% confidence level, another one is 5% confidence level. 1%, that is out of 100, 1% we are accepting the null hypothesis or rejecting null hypothesis. Out of 100%, 5% confidence we are accepting the null hypothesis or rejecting the null hypothesis, and that is called the level of significance. That everything we will study in detail when the problem comes. I will explain to you. So for the time being, you just read this for the examination. The next one, of course, the last one is types of error. Types of error. Okay, the H naught is rejected when it should be accepted. That is a null hypothesis we say. H naught means what? Null hypothesis we say. Okay, what we say? A null hypothesis. H naught. Usually say it is a null hypothesis. Null hypothesis means there is no significant difference between the two characteristics, that is sample and population. There is no significant difference. Like that we are assuming first hypothesis. That's called null hypothesis. Null hypothesis means there is no significant difference between sample study and the population study. Sample characteristic and population characteristics are equal. That's called null hypothesis. So another one is, we call it as alternative hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis means the symbol for alternative hypothesis is x1, h1. We call it as alternative hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis. So what is this? Again, this is a blind idea which is exactly opposite to null hypothesis. Exactly opposite to null hypothesis. That's called alternative hypothesis. Okay, we know that H naught means null hypothesis, and H1 means alternative hypothesis. This is exactly opposite to that. Opposite of this is this. Okay, so here there is no significance difference we are assuming here, and we assume here there is a significance difference. There is a significant difference. Take for example, here I am taking some H0 null hypothesis. Then what I have to take for example, the sample mean is exactly equal to the population mean. This is called null hypothesis because there is no difference between the sample mean and the population mean. This is one example for null hypothesis. Opposite of this is what? Alternative hypothesis we say. That means what? Opposite of this, that is x bar is not equal to mu, that is sample mean is not equal to population mean. This is called alternative hypothesis to this null hypothesis. Null hypothesis means there is no significant difference. There is no difference. We can accept as equal the sample study equal to population study. But alternative hypothesis says there is a difference. We cannot take both of them are equal. No, both of them are not equal. So there is a significance, a difference. This is called alternative hypothesis. Okay, so now come to this null hypothesis there. For the time being you forget this. Okay, so this is null hypothesis, am I correct? So this null hypothesis accepted, this null hypothesis H0 is accepted when it should be, it should be rejected when it should be accepted. It should be accepted, but we are rejecting this null hypothesis. We are rejecting, but actually it should be accepted. That error we are making is called type 1 error. So type 1 error means null hypothesis, that is H0 is rejected when it should be accepted. H0 should be rejected when it should be accepted. This mistake we are making here, that mistake or error is called type 1 error. Type 2 error is that exactly opposite to that. H0 we are accepting, but actually it should be rejected. H0 we are accepting, but actually we must reject it. We must reject it, but we are accepting. That error we are making, that error we call type 2 error. So examination point of view, this is very important. This is very important. Type 1 error means H0 is rejected when it should be accepted. We must accept this fact, but we are rejecting it. That's called type 1 error. This H0 we are accepting, but actually it should be rejected. That's called type 2 error. So these two types of error are very important to study, and with that, these are the some of the important topics for 2 marks question in the first unit, and you must understand it very clearly. Okay, otherwise you will suffer a lot. You have to suffer a lot otherwise, and that's what you have to sometime. And now let us have some feedbacks on that. Very fast we'll go, then we end the session now. Okay, now let me discuss about this now. A little zoom will help you. Can I? So recap of that, test of hypothesis means we have to test the hypothesis so that we can extend our sample idea to the population. Population means what? A very big group of elements aimed at to study something. That's called what? Population. Sample means what? Sample means a small part of a big population is called sample. A small part of a big group of elements called a sample. Take for to study the average marks of a class, we are taking only 10 students and we are studying this 10 students is called a sample. Next one is parameters and statistics. The characteristics of the population is called parameters, and the characteristics of the sample is called statistics. And types of sampling: purposive sampling, purposefully we are selecting the item; random sampling, the sampling which chosen each and other item such that the probabilities are equal; stratified random sampling, we are dividing the total population to group and we are selecting the samples; systematic sampling, some systems we are applying; and next one, sampling distribution, that means from the same population we are taking so many samples and for them we are finding out the mean. The mean may not be equal although the same size is equal, so we are distributing the mean according to the interval it comes. This is called sampling distribution. Next one is test of significance difference, that is usually we extend the sample characteristic to the population if sometimes the sample characteristic may be equal to the population characteristics, but this is not the case always. Sometimes the sample characteristics may be different from the population characteristics. There may be a big difference between sample study and population study, and that we are studying, that is called test of significance. And next one is test of hypothesis. To extend the sample study to the population study, we have to make a blind statement on which we have to apply the statistical method. At last we can accept the blind idea or reject the blind idea. The totality is called test of hypothesis. Critical region, what is a critical region? The H0 is rejected, that is null hypothesis rejected. That region is called critical region. Otherwise it is called accepted region. And next one is level of significance. Again, to study the population from the sample, we have to take the level of significance on which level we can accept the H0. It may be 1% or 9% confidence level, we say. So that is called level of significance. And lastly, we have to understand two errors. First one is type 1 error and second one is type 2 error. Type 1 error means we are rejecting H0 when it should be accepted. That is, we should accept, but we are rejecting the null hypothesis. That is called type 1 error. The second is type 2 error. That is what we are accepting the null hypothesis, but actually it should be rejected. It should be rejected, but by wrong way we are accepting the null hypothesis H0. The error we making is called type 2 error. So that's all today. The next class we'll be studying more on this. Okay, so till then I have to say goodbye to all of you, and I think that today teaching was so nice to you. And our topic today was test of unit 1, test of hypothesis. Test of hypothesis, very important thing. Population, second one is sample, and third one is parameters and statistics, and then test of significance, difference, and then test of hypothesis, and next one is what we call critical region, and next one is types of error, that's what we come to the end of this. Thank you.